Here's my keyword outline along with my sources and then the back. For many years now, voters in the United States have been encouraged to rock the vote on Election Day. But have we as Texans done our part? The answer is a flat out no. But why do we fail to use our constitutional right to vote in the Lone Star State? Today, I will make the case that due to a lack of expansion in voting rights, historic attitudes and beliefs towards politics and voting, and an electorate that believes that their vote does not change the outcome, Texas has become one of the worst performing states in terms of voter turnout in our country's history. As we begin to examine the abysmal voter turnout rates of Texas, it's important that we look at some of the history behind our state's voter suppression. Low voter turnout in Texas has led to one of the least politically engaged electorates in the country. Historically, we haven't been very progressive on expanding voting rights and making sure that all people know their rights to vote. Many people believe that their vote simply doesn't matter, and that by failing to participate in democracy, they aren't really affecting that much. Voter ID laws and lack of support from the Texas legislature have led to this decline in voter turnout. Many Texans, especially those living in historically red or blue districts, really feel that their vote doesn't matter. This can be largely attributed to something called gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is a practice used by politicians to basically choose their own voters. They can do this by packing voters of a certain group together, splitting the group of voters apart so that they don't have as strong of a voice, or making sure to carefully draw the district to cater to one race or ethnicity. Gerrymandering has historically suppressed the vote for a lot of citizens and made them feel that their vote will not matter. In an article published in the Texas Observer by Saul Elbein, a district that includes a suburb of Harris County has been gerrymandered into a legislative district with a largely Anglo, mostly Republican neighborhood to its north. 70% of the Anglos vote, while just 30% of the minorities do. See, he said, this is why we don't get shit in A-Leaf. According to a voter Elbein spoke to on the topic of his vote being a factor in an election's outcome. Moving on to my second point, only half of Texans that are registered to vote in the Lone Star State actually voice their opinion and vote. Demographics play a major role in the low voter turnout rate in Texas. Historically, everyone knows that the older you are, the more likely you are to vote. And historically, whites have had more of the power to vote due to voter suppression, Jim Crow laws, and stuff like that historically that have reduced the amount of vote by minorities. This is especially true in Texas. According to an article from the Texas Tribune by Alex Ura and Ryan Murphy, in which data from the U.S. Census Bureau is shown, older Texans are much more likely to participate in Texas elections, with the 65 plus years old population claiming the highest turnout rate. Texas ranks near the bottom of the list nationally in terms of voter participation. Later on in that same article, these authors from the Texas Tribune tell us that year after year, the state ranks near the bottom nationally in electoral participation. Additionally, some voters will simply choose not to vote at all if they strongly dislike both candidates. According to an article published by Pew Research in July of just this year, tens of millions of registered voters did not cast a ballot in the 2016 presidential election, and the share who cited a dislike of the candidates or campaign issues as their main reason for not participating reached a new high of 20% of the total people that cast a vote in 2016. Moving on to my last point, there is hope. Efforts are being made by both Republicans and Democrats and nonpartisan groups to increase voter turnout in Texas. Let's talk about what each party is doing. Republicans are really ramping up their mailing methods to get people registered to vote. They're sending them pre-filled voter registration applications and making sure that they are focusing on both major party and down-ballot elections. Democrats, on the other hand, are increasing their online voter registration efforts, contacting people through phone and text banks to make sure that they're registered to vote, and making sure that the information they need to apply for a ballot to be mailed to them from online is well known. Additionally, nonpartisan groups, like I mentioned earlier, are really ramping up their efforts, especially for this 2020 election that has been hit by the pandemic and coronavirus. One great example of this is actually an organization here at Texas A&M called Aggies Vote. Aggies Vote has ramped up their voter registration efforts, offering drive-through registration, quick one-day registration on campus, and even partnering with the A&M athletic department to organize a voter registration drive at the softball field on campus. Another big factor that these parties are using is social media. Social media platforms like Instagram, Snapchat, and Twitter are offering voter registration by state on their platforms. All it takes is the simple click of a link to find out if you're registered to vote in your state and what steps you can take to register if you're not already registered. It's also been reported that Snapchat recently registered over 1 million voters through their registration platform. All the information that we've talked about today has made it seem a little bit hopeless for Texans in terms of wanting their voter turnout to be on par with the rest of the country. But really, there is some hope, as I previously mentioned. In conclusion, due to a lack of expansion in voting rights, historic attitudes towards voting and politics as a whole, and people feeling that their vote will not change the outcome, Texas has become one of the worst performing states in terms of voter turnout in the United States. While the data may seem discouraging, it's my hope that I've informed you on the work that can be done for all Texans to successfully rock their vote. Voter turnout in Texas is abysmal compared to the rest of the country. But there is so much work that we can do as ordinary citizens to change this for the better, so that all of us can have our voice heard and so that all of us can rock our vote. Here's my outline again, and here's the back.